Now, how about all three of us?
Oh, hi.
Blame Windows. It could well be. It's not a Windows update because I'm on OS.
You're on a Mac.
Guess.
You're on a Mac.
I don't need StreamYard, Mike. Don't tell me. I just
okay.
I blew it.
So here I am over here. In theory, people should hear me too.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Now
look,
we've got
we're
everybody. And I killed my
Pooch,
echo.
you're echoing apparently.
I killed it. Give it just a second because we're about 20 seconds behind. But I believe I've got it now. So we're gonna start over.
This is why video engineers are the best.
Dave's gonna amuse us with some more video engineer versus audio engineer jokes. All right. From the top, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 19 of Maker That Money, the conversation where two makers, that's me, Pooch of Repkord, and Andrew of a 3D Gloop, talk about what it takes to get your passion project to the next level. We love talking about maker entrepreneurial ventures, business, small business in general, and stuff like that. And we are lucky to be in the presence of greatness today with Mr. David Randolph of Printed Solid, formerly of Printed Solid, now of Prusa 3D, technically. Yes, David?
Still Printed Solid. We're staying very separate throughout all those things. I was still Printed Solid. It's just at the end of the year, I don't get to keep the money.
I see. Well, I hope you get to keep some money. I mean, they got to be paying you something. But
a little something.
Well, welcome. Thank you for having us. Thanks for bearing with us over the technical issues. Everybody in the chat this morning, for those of you who are listening back on the podcast later on, we do this every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. And we welcome you to join us live so that you can feed questions to us in the chat. We also have the option up here for people who like call-in shows. You do have the option to call in and ask us questions or give us comments directly. So feel free if you're feeling brave to do that. Today, we're going to talk about something that David gave me some really sage advice on in a couple years ago now, and that's the shiny object syndrome. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, I'm gonna put Dave on the spotlight for right here, and I'm gonna have him tell you what it is and why you should care about it.
Well, the problem is that with the shiny object syndrome is that there is always something better. There's always something more to do. There's always something else 10 feet in front of you. There's always something you could be doing in addition to. And unfortunately, it always stops you from doing what you have to do right now. So shiny object syndrome to me is kind of like where you're standing there and you're like, okay, I've got this ready to go to market. Ooh, I could do this. Stop that. That's what shiny object syndrome is.
And as a maker, especially coming from this area, that is probably one of the hardest things when you take it from just your passion. We're so used to wanting to tinker, right? We have our I think we all came from hobbyist roots to some extent, or we're just tinkerers in general. And you just, it's in our blood. We want to make it better, right? We want to do the next thing. And as a business, that is really, really hard to reconcile because having that focus is so critical. I always say that making one of something and making 1,000 or 10,000 of something are completely different challenges. And we come from these areas where we kind of start with, you go to a MRF or NERF when you want to show off like the thing that you made. And I think that's why a lot of people think that, hey, I made this and now I can turn it into a product. And it's really less about the product and more about all the support systems that get you to that final deliverable product. So Dave, you're spot on. And I'm sure you felt the draw of that just as much as the rest of us. I think I'm jumping ahead a little bit though, and I apologize for that. Why don't you start by giving us the origin story of how you came into Printed Solid and what your origin was with product and all of that stuff for those that don't already know the story.
Well, I will say this, give or take back in 2007, 2008, I had a business called Ran Laser where I was running laser cutters. That was kind of my thing. I built boxes for different people, different configuration panels, whatever they needed. So that was my side hustle for the day. So much that my side hustle for the day was there were a few Chinese companies that were importing lasers, and they kept getting broken in shipping. So I would prepare them up to sell them off for them. And they paid me in laser cutters. So it was a great deal. I just ended up like, a garage full of laser cutters and laser tubes. But I've been making enclosures for 3D printers for the longest time. And Matthew Gordon originally started Printed Solid back in 2013, technically, according to the IRS, but didn't really get a heavy start till about 2015.
Okay.
And that's when I came along and I started working with him and started putting enclosures in a store. And before too long, it got a little too busy to be my side hustle. So we combined Rand Laser into Printed Solid. And then, as time progressed, I kept buying more and more stock from Matt, and he became less and less until all of a sudden it was taking up both way too much of his time. He had 2 wonderful kids. He's been raising them, and he was missing them growing up. So I said, all right, I'm going to buy out your last little bit. Get the heck out of here. And I'll be the one that suffers. I don't have kids, so I'll be the one that suffers and take it all on. And that's what happened. So I took over, and he left about a little over 3 years ago now. And so I've been running the place ever since.
So you're no stranger to the mergers and acquisitions in this world. You've been through 2 now, I guess, at least.
2 mergers and acquisitions personally, and then in a former life as a video engineer, my primary job was to technically lead companies through mergers. So
you know what it takes.
I spend way too much time with lawyers.
Somebody's got to do it. Wow. So, I mean, okay. So Printed Solid, you said 2013, let's say 2015 for all intents and purposes. So that makes it at least 7 years since you've been involved with Printed Solid.
Right.
And when you first came to them, like, where were you doing? Were you doing all your fabrication out of your house still, or did you have your own place?
I was still out of my house. I was doing fabrication.
Oh, wow.
I was making enclosures out of my house. So much, and it was actually in Maryland. So Printed Solid is, give or take, it was about a 2-hour drive from there.
Okay. Which is in Delaware, guys.
Which is in Delaware. And the humor I would put to this is that at one point I need a really large laser cutter to get through these things, but there was no door big enough in my house to get a laser cutter through. So I built my own laser cutter inside of the house. And then and then that way when I moved, I had to take the laser cutter apart. That was the only way to get it in.
I was hoping you sold it with the house. You should have said, like, laser cutter house included, with a fine house enclosure, right?
Yes.
And I had to quickly learn building codes, because at that house I had to there was a basement. I had to go down there and put up additional support beams and all over the place, because the laser cutter and all the acrylic and material was too heavy for housing codes in the area.
Oh man,
I can imagine. And then I've talked to you because I kind of got my start in lasers too, not probably to the extent that you did, but the considerations for ventilation and air scrubbing and all that stuff. Trying to integrate that in your house and still live in it and not, I imagine was a challenge for you as well.
Storage was my biggest challenge after the actual ventilation parts of it, just because at one point every room in my house had enclosures stored in them. And what would happen is every weekend I would, rent a U-Haul and drive them up to Printed Solid to ship them out.
Wow. Oh my. Not the most efficient distribution channel there, was it?
It was not the most efficient, but it was everything. The entire basement had, packing supplies, and the entire first floor of the house was just, and I mean, every room, the bedroom, there was a 1 box wide path to the bed, and everything else was straight to the ceiling.
Wow. I love hearing this type of thing, because guys, this is how it starts. This is how it all begins.
Yes.
And so, it's not often that you get to see how the sausage is made or hear that. And obviously for as many that are successful, there's plenty that don't make it as well. And so, and the path is fraught. It's not necessarily you may be doing everything right, and it just takes one little thing, one legal issue, one failed partnership. There's all kinds of things that it's literally navigating a minefield sometimes, is what it feels like.
Oh, there's so many ways to die.
There's way more ways to die than there are to succeed. I mean, and do you feel like this is a loaded question, Dave, but now that you've made it, do you feel like you've made it? Are you safe now? Or are you ever going to feel like it's as stable as it needs to feel?
Oh, you're never safe. You're never safe. So that's a problem you always face here, is because, see, technically I'm still CEO, even though, Prusa Global technically owns, the stocks of Printed Solid. And if you ever watch the news, it's never the stockholders that get arrested.
It really isn't, is it?
Nope.
They need a fall guy. They need a fall guy.
Need a fall guy.
You're the fall guy.
And there has to be a fall guy in America for the company, and I am that fall guy. So I better make sure I do everything right.
Right. Or you find another fall guy, and then
exactly. I just kind of back out.
So I don't know if it's too personal then. So as far as the ownership structure goes, I'm assuming you're still like you have some ownership through Prusa or something to that extent, or are you allowed to disclose that?
No. They bought 100% of Printed Solid stock.
Okay.
So they own 100% of the stock in the company.
Okay.
Felt it was a little bit cleaner that way, because if we did 80-20 splits, there's a lot of legalities that have to happen with distributions and payments and profit and spending and everything else that happen.
Sure.
This way, they're 100% in charge of the money.
Okay. Does that give you any ownership in Prusa, or is that not how you did it up, or is that
zero? Prusa definitely owns Prusa, and I just run Printed Solid for them.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm a complete noob to how mergers and acquisitions, right? And then there's probably a million different ways that it can be structured. But
big time.
But interesting. Very curious about how that process goes. And I know that this has been in the works for some time now, right? So it probably took quite a while to cross the T's, dot the I's, all that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was quite a bit of work in it. I mean, this whole deal started, early last year, initial discussions.
Okay.
And then officially happened in January. And then after it took, 6 months or 5 months for all the legal issues to get out of the way so that we could actually make a public announcement.
Okay. And what, I mean, did it feel hard at first at the idea of relinquishing control of your baby to some extent, or was this I hope it feels like a good move.
It feels like a good move, but a big part of the discussion was, how much am I giving up? I mean, it was, hey, how much are you going to come in here and tell me what I have to do and stuff like that. And it really worked out to be, David, you just go, I'm not changing anything. The only thing I'm doing is putting Prusa products in the store.
Sure, which is awesome. I know there's a lot of people excited about that. Simpler process for getting Prusa stuff. So that's fantastic.
And it's been less that they tell me, and I have to sit there and I go, I want to put this in the store, and it's more I'm telling them I want to sell their stuff. So it's really left Printed Solid. So it's still mine, but I just don't, like I said, the only difference is I don't get the money at the end of the year.
Alrighty.
That's the big difference that came from it. Now, we'll tell you, technically January 1st, it did become property of Prusa, and then I had to work out the legalities. New Year's Eve at midnight, I was sitting here at this desk, and of course I had, bottle of Jameson, and I had my shot at midnight hit, and I went, okay, officially this is no longer mine.
Wow.
And really nothing changed on that. That was the only thing that really changed overnight. So, but that's how I celebrated the New Year's, was I understood the legalities of what happened.
Alrighty.
That's wild. I can't imagine what that would feel like. It's all, I don't know about you, Andrew, but it's like, it's all I've known for so long. And for me, it's only been, it's been technically 6 years to the IRS, but I say we're really in year 2 for what as I know it now. So I still feel like I'm very young in a startup, but, and then it feels like 20 years. I got some grays very recent from a lot of this, but man, I can't imagine, that feeling of feeling like it's not actually yours anymore. But you sound like you're pretty okay with it, and it's awesome that they've given you the autonomy that you want and need. So that's good.
It's still mine. It's just the only difference is that if Prusa, comes to the door, I technically have to legally let him in.
Yeah.
So
you just
I
go
have to
out
lock
there
him in the
knocking.
He's
Go
not
ahead.
knocking. I'd be like, yeah, okay, you can take whatever you want. It's yours.
I guess, I mean, this is always I don't know about you, David, but I listen to a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts, and you hear horror stories about, partnerships or when VCs end up taking over, and that ultimately they can install somebody else if they decide to. And that's the trade-off, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, but
that was my fear is that there, I mean, me and Joe, we known each other for a really long time. But it's still a dangerous partnership. Culturally, they're slightly different over there than me and slightly different. And if they didn't own 100% of this place, let's say it was an 80-20 split,
right,
I could be stuck with 20% of a place I didn't want to be a part of, type of thing.
right. Yeah.
So it's 100% theirs, and I'm along for the ride. So that way there's none of that partnership conflict you had.
I have to imagine your background then in doing mergers and acquisitions came in incredibly handy, because you knew exactly the perils of all the different choices.
I knew how I wanted to structure it.
And so I'm assuming this was at your suggestion of how to structure it?
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to partnerships, I'd like to say you really want to be the extreme minority holder in a place, if you can be, so that you look at it as just like buying stocks on the stock market.
Okay.
You want to be almost a 50-50. I personally like the 45-55 split deal, or you want to be 100%. You never do want to be the majority and have minorities also reporting to you as far as stockholders are concerned. And the main reason why you want a 55-50 is because, 55-45 is because you technically have someone for minor day-to-day activities that could make the administrative call. But if there's any major concern or economic concerns to the company, you've got to have greater than a 2/3 split on the votes, which you can have in your charter. And that's just a better way to do your partnerships.
Yeah, I hadn't anticipated getting into the details of partnerships, but I'm fascinated by this kind of thing, because I know there's, like I said, a number of ways to do it. It always feels different when you've got people with skin in the game, what their motivations and stuff are too. But obviously, there's challenges along with that. So that's really interesting. Were you the one to? It sounds like you were the one to propose the structure. Did you approach Prusa first? Did they approach you, or was it kind of something you?
Oh, they approached me. I'm just that valuable.
You're that approachable.
I mean, I just scream money, this type of thing. But no, I actually had a couple other companies at the same time that were also courting me, that wanted the same deal.
Oh,
and
very cool.
The prettiest lady at the dance.
I was just the prettiest lady at the dance going around.
Dance cards full.
And they were all great people that wanted to do it. It was the structure that Prusa brought to the table that I can get behind this. I believe I can actually be a part of it, because I was not trying to. We've seen there's a few companies, they sell and then the main owners disappear.
Yeah.
And the deal was, I told all the companies, I said, I'm not going anywhere. Right? You're not getting rid of me. And that was the first part of the contract. So I said the only reason why it's for sale is because I want somebody to expand and grow Printed Solid, and I feel like I've kind of done the most I can with where I'm at.
Okay. And so you are under a contract for a period of time then to be there, or
I'm under contract to be here. That wasn't really needed, but I was under a contract to be. I'm under a contract to be here because everything needs to be legal, no matter what. And there is already extensions. There's already extensions built into it so that they can pretty much extend it, as long as I'm alive, and maybe a few years after I die. This weekend at Burning Me, and it'll be fine.
That sounds fun. That brings up my next question, and maybe it's less savory to ask, but I'm always curious too. Is there like succession planning that has to happen, or contingency planning if something happens to you? Do you have to bake that stuff into the agreement? The whole hit by a bus problem. How do you handle
It's
that?
it's not as part of the actual agreement and acquisition, but it is a task that needs to be set up after an acquisition.
Okay.
So that's already been started.
So nothing formalized in an agreement, but that's always an interesting
because
challenge.
it doesn't really change the contract. I'd be dead.
Yeah. What do you care? You're dead. Yeah, I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's minutiae in the contract negotiations. You sit there and you say, if I die, I don't have to give the money back because I ended the contract early. Things like that are in the contract.
Yeah.
They sit there and go, you just died and it's just fine. That's where it's at, type of thing. But as far as succession goes, we're working out the finer details of that. If I die tomorrow, there'll be a headache for about a week, but we're trying to work out the details.
A week? You think that's it?
Just a week.
On.
Just a week.
Give yourself more credit than that.
Oh, well, no. There's people I can, they would call in here and they'd be able to pick up where I was. I'm that organized. All I need is my password.
Well, alrighty.
It's password 1, guys. It's not password.
Password 1.
Well, man, I mean, again, just so exciting, and I'm sure, and I can't imagine what is it. Where do you imagine it's gonna feel? What it's gonna feel like a year from now, 2 years? And I don't want to give you the cliche like, what's the 5-year plan question, but I know you're a planner. You're you've got this all sketched out somewhere. Probably looks like a wire diagram. You got the pictures with all the yarn going from people and stuff, like a crime scene
between everything.
Yeah. What do you got in the works?
Well, my plans is to own the world for Perusa.
World domination. Good.
Yeah, world domination for Perusa out of this. But what I really want to do is, and this is not on paperwork yet, this is just, my personal vision and what wakes me up in the middle of the night, is what I really want to do is I want to become a major component to keep Perusa going and optimize their manufacturing. They're doing a great job on it, but I want to be able to optimize it and produce it and make them increase production, things like that, and help them take it to the next level.
That's awesome.
As I jokingly tell people, I want to become the American Joe.
You're gonna have to get the hat first. You gotta
I gotta get the hat and I gotta get the glasses right. But that's what I'm shooting for, is to become the American Joe for Perusa, to help out, to keep things going, expand it, create the true redundant backup, contingency plan. The idea that you have two sides of the world, either one of them could still exist without the other. Just build that into the model. That's my dream. It's not official, it's not on paper, but that's my dream.
I can't even fathom at the scales that you're talking about. I've been to the Perusa factory. I've seen, like, it is not a small operation, guys. I mean, you see the pictures of the farm and stuff, but it goes well beyond all of that. I think they're up to, what is it now, like 800 people or something like that, Dave? You know?
I can't say that number officially, but you're about in that category.
Something like that. Every time I talk to Joe, it's like another 100, 200 people, or in there now.
Incredible.
And I know they're talking about another potential move and all sorts of interesting stuff. So, what'll be interesting is, we're gonna get all the details from David's side of the story, here, and maybe in a couple weeks we'll have Joe on and see how he feels about the whole thing, and see if those stories line up, in the same way. I'll bet you he's just as excited, if not more, than you are, because it sounds like you can bring a lot to the table in terms of, obviously getting him into a new market, a new, I don't know. Are you able to say, or do you know what percentage of the Perusa's market the U.S. is compared to the rest of the world?
No, I can't say that number out loud, but it is significant.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is in the consumer category. If you'll notice our store, you'll see that we're focusing on educational and corporate, enterprise, government sales, those type of people. There's several reasons for that, but the first one is that a business or a school or government agency cannot buy from a foreign country directly. And it's not so much the, use a credit card and buy it from a foreign country. It's the tariffs. Because if you write a purchase order for, a printer, you can't put on there the tariffs because you don't know what's going to be until it actually hits the port.
Right.
So businesses can't handle that. Government just won't handle that. And schools just absolutely can't work off schools can't write a PO or a grant unless they have exact numbers down to the penny.
Yeah.
So, and then there's also several states that require you have to do sales tax for school sales, and a foreign country cannot do that. So,
Yeah.
For me, it's pure legality and just dealing with paperwork. So I like to say the biggest part of this acquisition I've brought to the table so far is that I'm really good at Excel and signing forms and doing bank deposits.
and it goes well beyond that. I mean, the administrative, I mean, just I can't the tax implications. I'm sure you're having to learn a good amount about. I can't imagine what the tax implications are for Prusa and how that works, because now they. What does that mean? Obviously, because they can now sell to government and schools and stuff like that. That does mean they're an American entity, or to some extent. How does that work?
They're not an American entity. I am an American entity.
Okay.
But
you are Prusa now, so
no, they own 100% of my stock.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I think from a lawyer, they just own 100% of my stock. It's like if you bought 100% of Sony stock, you don't own Sony. You own 100% of Sony stock.
Okay, so as an entity, Printed Solid Silver is very much a thing.
A true American company.
It's just the ownership structure is foreign-owned American company now.
Now there's several government. When I deal with government contracts, I have to give them certain paperwork to identify that a majority of the company is owned by a foreign entity and report that, things like that. IRS requires me to identify the foreign entity and identify myself as liable for the foreign entity. So things like that. Lots of wonderful rules involved there.
You're responsible for their behavior? Is that
yes.
it? Wow.
I am responsible for their behavior.
Interesting. Okay.
All righty.
I know, right?
I'm learning a lot. I mean, this is really interesting. I imagine, do you feel like you still have a lot to learn around this? Is there a lot of reading that you have to do, or you got a pretty good handle on it at this point?
Oh my God. I spent so much time reading. Every single state I have learned their unique individual tax laws for every state in the United States. I have learned all the import laws, all the import restrictions, and then try and communicate this over to Prusa and communicate it in a way that they go, okay, that makes sense. They don't understand that there's just random amounts of money that come out of the checking account every month, and I go, oh yeah, that's just a bunch of sales taxes I got to pay. And they're just every state some random amount.
It sure feels like it.
But there's state tax problems. I mean, you're in California. Did you know that there is no agency in California that a school, for example, if a school or college buys a printer, they still have to pay sales tax?
So so guys, for those that aren't aware, when companies buy from you, like they can get sales tax exemptions. This is what Dave's referring to.
Correct.
Especially if they're reselling, or there's R&D, and there's different ways that you can get exemptions, categories and stuff like that. But education gets no such exemption, which seems backwards in a lot of ways.
Only
it seems really backwards.
Most other states they do.
Yes. We're special. What we do doesn't make sense in a lot of regards, but that is the price you pay for sunshine.
California has 291 different tax rates.
Yes, and they all suck.
I know that because I have to file 291 separate listings for that.
Does it just make you crave like going to a VAT system or something, like the way that Europe handles, like, because it's based on it's antiquated times. That's what it feels like, right? But when brick and mortar days, like, it didn't matter. It wasn't the administrative overhead of having to manage all those different municipalities.
It's a bad patch system. It really should just be an internet tax. It's flat rate. We all pay it. And it gets spread amongst, the states based on population or something like that. That would make things so much easier, because I spend more money on administrating sales tax than I do actually on sales taxes.
Yeah. It's a thing. We could literally do a whole episode on that. It wouldn't be very exciting.
No, it'd be very boring.
Very boring.
But these are the things that, again, when you're getting your start, especially as a maker, and it's just like this is where makers burn out. They're like, I don't want to deal with it, because it's like yeah, you do have to deal with this stuff if you want to play the game, if you want to participate in this commerce. So,
But now for makers, here's what I tell them: you can learn it. You can learn it. The information's online. You can hire accountants. You can learn it. Unless you start out making $5 million a year in your first 6 months, your tax penalties for your learning phase is not going to be that bad. So
It's not bad at all.
yeah, makers, get out there, start making, start selling. Just
Yep.
start immediately figuring out what you have to worry about taxes and statewide. And don't forget, almost every state out there, you get that first year that you don't have to be incorporated or get an LLC. They literally forgive you for that first year of your business. However, if you pass your second year, they won't forgive that. So
see, I didn't
your
know
first
that.
year.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I just from the get go we started and we picked LLC, but interesting.
Yeah, well, you don't know if you're going to be a successful business or not.
No.
So in that first part of the year, you know, you're using your laptop in your house and your basement and stuff that you already paid taxes on to start your business.
Yeah.
They
And
give you
so
1 year, huh? That's
most states will give you 1 year
Most
before
states,
they require
yeah.
you to. You've got to do some sort of filing with us,
Yeah.
not on sales tax, but just on your tax returns. You still have to count everything as income, but they give you 1 year that you don't have to incorporate and start expensing and all that stuff.
That's a good tip. I wasn't aware of that. So right off the bat, like I said, I'm learning so much. I want to go to the chat. We got a question for you from Imperial 3D Printing and Design. He asks, when can we expect more Jesse's subscriptions to open up? And is there a chance of seeing Prusament subscriptions in the future?
Ooh. All right. So Jesse's subscription. I first have to tell you that probably not anytime in the next couple of months here. But let me tell you, this is a good thing for maker and business people to think about. Why Jesse's subscription exists. It was not meant to be a money maker for me. It's a money breaker. So
What does that
I run I run 2 shifts a day on the filament lines, and Jesse's subscription fills out the extra time during the month, so I can still keep my people fully employed and the lines fully running.
keeps the machines
So
going? Okay.
it keeps the machines going. So Jesse's subscription, the number of boxes that are released are based on production flow, so that I don't I don't end up like some companies that just sold until they were blue in the face,
Right.
and then go out of business because they didn't deliver anything.
Right.
And I don't become I don't become a company that has my workers sitting around with the lines not doing anything.
Yeah.
So that's
Very
why
smart.
it's a good way to fill it out, and it reduces the total overhead cost. So it keeps my filament at a relatively cheap price. So it's a good gauge. Production right now, Jesse is extremely popular, so it's making it hard to add it on. I'm look for another shift of people to run 3 shifts, or get more equipment.
Nice.
And then that will up the subscription numbers, or Jesse just has to have really poor sales. One of the two, or a lot of people have to leave. It's one of those things that has to happen.
So we don't want to necessarily see more subscriptions become available because it's metric of sales.
That's a bad thing.
It's a bad metric of sales for Jesse currently, but it could be other things too. It sounds like
it could be other things. I get more equipment. I hire more people. There's like 5 good reasons and 5 bad reasons why I could have more subscriptions available.
How many lines are you running currently? Sorry,
we're running 2 lines.
2 lines currently.
Awesome.
2 shifts. Of
2 lines, 2 shifts.
Okay.
And the way the lines are set up is that one person can run both lines simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
It's great.
So you got some pretty good automation then. If somebody can just bounce around and maintain.
It's optimized process. There's very little automation. It's a very optimized process. I had the lines designed so that they actually face each other. So one is a right extruder and one's a left extruder. So there's the right Twix and left Twix.
Nice.
And that way the person walks right down the middle row between the 2 extruders, maintaining both systems just by looking at either side. And there's 5 feet between each, both machines. So it's very tight.
What about the Prusament side of the question? Has there been conversations on that?
And no, and I doubt you'll see it. I can't comment because I don't know their marketing on that side of things, but I doubt you'll see it.
Okay.
Because if you look at their store, you'll notice that they don't have everything in stock all the time.
Yeah, I have noticed.
So not really a reason for it yet.
Okay. Okay. And as far as the plan for the foreseeable future, Prusament will still be produced in Czech Republic. They're not looking to have production actually in the U.S., but you will carry it at some point.
Oh, we already carry. We already have some in stock here. We have their top 10 colors in stock right now.
Nice.
We're getting more, and we'll eventually have all of it. But they have several things in the works over there, and once they get through all those things, they're going to evaluate the situation, and they might consider letting me do Perusament over here. We don't know.
Huh.
It's not been taken off the table, but it's not on the table yet.
Are there machinery considerations in terms of like, are you able to produce the same way that they do, same equipment? Do they have any special stuff that you would have to bring in for more lines?
In order to be fair to Perusament, I would have to have their exact equipment follow their exact procedures.
Sure.
My equipment can get close, but that's what makes it Jesse at $20. It's meant to get close to it.
Got it.
They have their process. They've developed so many internal. You've seen that they've developed so many internal systems and automations that make their filament what it is.
It's awesome.
And that's what I would have to do, the exact same thing over here, just to be honest to the brand, so that you would be no way you could tell a difference between what's over there and over here.
That makes sense.
And that's a huge logistical problem. I mean, electricity alone would be a problem. So that's what it would take.
So Andrew Rogers in the chat comments that he thinks he's only been getting left extruder product this entire time.
PLA is on the left, so if you've been using PLA, then yes.
So, yeah, if you're a PLA user, there you go.
There you go.
Who knew?
Now you know.
Well, listen, I know this has been kind of a circuitous path we've taken because we started talking about shiny objects.
Yeah.
And then of course we got swept into this. So I want to circle back because it is a topic that's near and dear to me, and that I by no means have perfected at all. I still struggle with it on the daily. Andrew, how do you feel about it?
Oh, absolutely. It's literally everything here at Gloop. It's like, oh, we could do this and we could do that, and some of the chemistries that we're working on they're so exciting, and we can see applications well beyond adhesives. But how do we focus?
Yeah.
So the biggest thing you can do with shiny objects is that you need to think of, shiny object can kill your company real fast. So the first thing you have to do is establish an end date or a final date, a dead point time. And I think I even did this with you, Pooch. I gave you a drop dead date.
He threatened me. He literally threatened me.
But you have to pick a date, and you sit there and say, if I don't release by then, the company is going to suffer.
Yeah.
And you have to finish everything up until that point. So even if you have a feature that you've kind of worked out, if you don't have it ready for production, that's not going to be on the product. And you save it for the next revision and the next revision. So shiny objects are something that you put on a shelf and look at, but you pull it off only when it's ready and usable.
So let me tell I'll just tell the story really quick, as long as this doesn't embarrass Dave too much. I don't think it would, but this was Maker Faire. I want to say it was 2018 in New York, Maker Faire. Yep. And we're there, and it was the first time I had the Prusa version of the Rep box on display in Prusa's thing, which was huge. That was I can't even believe they agreed to that at this time. But I was lucky enough to twist the right arm for that. The MMU had just dropped I think the second one, I believe, at that point, and it was a great companion for that because they're kind of solution for, I call them the little sausage trays for the spools and stuff. Like, I wasn't a fan of it. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about it and stuff like that, but it was just a nice, here's a nice compact way to put 5 spools together and feed it in, and it worked. There was we didn't have any whiz bang rewinder system. It was just like, give yourself enough buffer space, and it worked. And so they were showing that off. And I ran into Dave there, and he goes, this is great. I can't remember how we struck up the conversation exactly, but basically he said, okay, I'm going to give you Do you remember how much time it was? A couple months. I think you said,
I think it
Dave.
was like 2 or 3
I
months,
think you
something
said
like
give me a
that.
couple months. He's like, you got to get this thing locked in, because I think we had just done like a new version or something, but it was, I don't think it was selling yet or something.
You spent about 30 minutes talking about shiny objects before I said this. That's kind of what made me say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he goes, I'm gonna give you, let's just say 3 months. And if you don't have this thing on the store ready to sell and going, I'm gonna release my spool holder solution that I've been working on out there. And I think a lot of people would be like, this guy just threatened me. But the truth is, I found that incredibly motivating. I knew that it was from a place of encouragement. And there have been a couple moments in my professional life where I've had these people just kind of help push you off the high dive. And I think that it's for I think Dave had a good read on me. He understood, like, this is a good tactic for motivating. And I took him very seriously, because Dave doesn't apparently sleep, and he's constantly tinkering on ideas and stuff that I can't imagine your pile of stuff that has just never seen light of day because you just, haven't gotten there yet, or just got busy with other things or something.
Well,
But
my school box is still not, been seeing the light of day.
Yeah, I very much believe you have something. It's not like it's that hard to develop something similar. I always say, like, a child could reverse engineer what we do, but the sauce is more in the production and the efficiencies of figuring out how to get it done, and then kitting and packaging and all these little ancillary components that, again, make makers go crazy because it's not fun, but it is very necessary. And we had our share of product that got damaged because we didn't package it well enough, and spent way too much money on stuff as we got going, doing excess. So over time you find what the sweet spot is. But that's kind of how that whole thing got started. And he talked about shiny object to me. He's like, I know where you are right now, and I know your temptation is going to be to constantly, but if I just tweak this, or if I do this, it's going to be a little bit better. And he was spot on. Of course, it's like I still do that at times. I'm like, I am my own worst critic, and I think most people are with their product. But the advice is sound in that sometimes you're actually cannibalizing your ability to have a future upgrade path and reason for people to buy the next version, right? So I don't want to go as far as the planned obsolescence that we're familiar with Apple, but there is merit to having a release strategy. And we as makers benefit from these phenomenal tool sets these days that allow us to do continual improvement like never before, right? That we use 3D printing and leverage that so that we can provide upgrade paths and keep products viable for longer periods of time. I mean, Prusa is a fantastic example of that. What they've done with Mark III is the third major iteration of their printer, and that's seen 4 major upgrades, I think, at this point. The
4 major revisions.
Yeah, sorry. And it's fantastic. It feels like a great value to be part of that ecosystem, because they're like, here's the parts you want to print to upgrade, or you can buy a kit sometimes, if there's new hardware that they get. But it gives you these great coming back to the well kind of revenue streams. Sorry, the excited Italian gesticulation got me on the mic boom there. But it's such a challenge still, and but we have spent a little bit more time planning and saying, like, okay, this is good enough for now. My question for you, I know that was a long way to get there, Dave, is how do you draw that line? How do you determine what is, I don't know if it's minimum viable product, or if it's just like, this is where we're deciding to lock. Like, how do you set your criteria for your products to determine that?
My bank account.
The money.
Seriously, if I can't keep the doors open, that is when you have to stop then.
Yeah.
So I can't keep the doors open. That's the first time you have to stop and say, I got to release something just to pay the bills. So you sit there and you establish that as your final line. The other one is timely iterations. Is the market passing you up? Is it time for you? Did someone else come out with something better than your first gen? Well, it's time for your second gen.
Right.
and so on and so forth. I give you an example of my enclosures. I mean, the next gen, I cannot tell you. I chased that one too long. That one,
Interesting.
my next gen should have been released about a year earlier than it was.
Why do you think that? Because the other product just came along and cannibalized,
Well,
not cannibalized.
no. It was the problem was the manufacturing techniques. I was focused too much on shiny object syndrome. I fell for my own problem. I had a full size, giant 10 foot by 6 foot vacuum form machine over there, and I was ready to start doing bubble domes and, get additional ovens the size of, semi trucks and all that. I was going at it, and I had to back down and go, nope, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. And then go back to viability and what I could actually make a new product of, and focus on the original goal, where I said, this next generation one, I want better heat retention. And I just went back to that and said, okay, let's just pull all these fancy ideas back and decide what it's going to take to actually hit those numbers.
So you bring up a really interesting point, and the creeping elegance, if you will, right? Where you're working on a design and then you see all of these little things that you can add, and you just slowly scope creep, right? But it's, maybe it's not scope creep. Maybe it's just, again, I can make this better. I can refine this. I can, tune this manufacturing process. And then you're so far away from where you started. Now there's a giant chasm you got to figure out how to cross.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a 10 foot by 6 foot vacuum former to play with on the weekend.
Yeah,
that's where it gets dangerous.
My trap, yeah.
Yep. Oh, tools are toys for us, right? As makers, they're toys, and the limitless possibilities that we see in the tools themselves are really interesting, and are kind of a lot of driving factors for why we choose the things that we do. But at least for me over here,
terrible criteria for business decision. I've fallen guilty to the same thing. It's like, oh, I really want, the pressure former, the CNC setup, and all this stuff, but the challenge, and that's where, Dave, like you said, like it can get real dangerous real quick, because like you become invested in very expensive equipment, and that means you need more space for it and potentially more employees, and so you can very rapidly spend a lot of money trying to get these new fancy tools that you think are going to really but then you're not spending the time to analyze, like, how long is it going to take me to actually pay for this, like what's the practicality of it, and so figuring out
how smart of a person you have to hire to run that machine on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That vacuum former was a huge learning curve. I mean, for myself, and I'm sitting there like trying to write programming, Arduinos to automate all the processes so that I didn't have to have, someone with a PhD degree in vacuum forming to make each one.
They're doing PhDs in vacuum forming these days?
Pretty much. But yeah, I mean, that's a problem you run into. So you have to be, I mean, my shiny object syndrome is in processes. That's where I fail. That's where I tend to break down, as I sit there and I go, I want to spend $50,000 on a machine that saves 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You have to realize sometimes it's better to just count bolts by hand.
So how do you do the calculus on what's the juicy opportunity versus what's shiny here?
For me, I look at it this way: if I can hire, but this is just me, it's bad business, but if I can hire a person to do it, I would rather hire a person to do it. So, because I create a job, I'm better off that way. I really believe, as a business owner, my job is to create jobs. So if I can get a machine to replace someone, I don't want to do that. I'd rather hire someone to do it if I can.
We talked a little bit about this at Rapid, and I found it interesting because it's backwards from where I feel like my mind is going. I'm in one of the most expensive labor markets there are. I'm passionate about automation and these great tool sets and stuff like that. And so, and frankly, and I'm sure I've got probably employees listening right now, but it's like a machine is oftentimes a lot more reliable than people can be, but there's a big X factor, obviously, in what you can and can't do. And at the end of the day, you always need people at the very least to operate the machines or pack the thing. Like, there's tons that we still can't automate.
Well, and that's also really interesting too, because for us, we produce the same product over and over and over again, right? And so for us, it's about consistency and repeatability. people are not great at repetitive tasks. Like we suck at it. If it's the same thing
It's where the
over
mistakes
and
happen.
over and over again. Yeah. And I was going to ask Dave, like how, when you have a machine, because it sounds like you have invested a lot in your processes. Where do you kind of see the benefit of developing, maybe it's an automation. I know Prusa does this a lot, like developing an in-house automation versus just figuring out a way to have an employee do that. Even though it's a repetitive task,
That's a great
is
question.
it do you start with an employee first and then slowly figure out how to automate it, or you just go all out trying to figure out how to automate it day one?
No, I mean, my guy's in the back there because we switched to cardboard spools recently, and I gave him the cardboard spools and a rubber mallet, and I said, go to town, put all the spools together one by one. And I start to make machinery that I sit there and go, here you go, I've made a pneumatic press that you just shove the pieces into and it presses it together.
Okay.
And then I go, this is good enough for me at my level and the number I'm making. But then you go to Prusa and they have a full robot sitting there that's slamming two things in the air together and spinning it around and throwing it on the machine. They really automate it. I think a lot of it has to do with scale, because if you got to spend $500,000 to buy a machine to put spools together, and I'm not giving you a Prusa price or anything like that, but if as an example, if you spend $500,000 to put two halves of a spool together, you're wasting money. Because
that payoff time is long.
Yeah, I can pay someone for 10, 15 years, to sit there and put spools together.
Right.
Yeah.
And in 10 and 15 years, we may not be using spools anymore or whatever. I mean, like, who knows how the technology is going to change. So,
and you always have to remember, humans are much more flexible. So when the spool changes slightly, I got to go and rebuild $500,000 worth of machinery.
Yep.
Or I just tell the person that's putting it together, I go, listen, just hammer it harder from here on out. Those subtle differences.
That's
makes sense.
It's definitely opened my eyes up to some different perspective. Like that, I don't know. I think I take a lot of stress on making sure that, like, when I hire somebody, I want to make sure that I can keep them employed. And so, like, what is the sustainability and what is and I'm still learning. I only have 3 people or 2 right now, but we've had up to 3, and just figuring out, trying to forecast when you're in a growth curve is so hard. And understanding the cycles of the market and the sales cycle for stuff, and is my product getting stale, or is this actually just a sign of the greater economy? Who knows? It's kind of a crapshoot in a lot of regards. But I'm very conservative, and so, like, I want to have enough saved away so that I can cover payroll for months and months and months. I think there's a lot of people that are living way closer to the edge, and I think a lot of it has to do with your risk tolerance as well, obviously.
For the longest time, Printed Solid, we were a week away from being bankrupt for several years.
Wow.
I can't believe how common that story is.
It's very common in small business. I mean, it's scary how common it is. I have more money in my checking account at home than I do in the business sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not saying much because the business paid me. But no, I mean, you kind of ride that line, and it's really scary. I've always believed in staying slightly behind the actual demand. So if the demand needs 500 spools a day of filament, I want to make 490 spools a day. And the main reason why is because I'll sell everything I make, and I won't. And when the market dips, you don't know.
That's true.
Well, and I mean,
scarcity kind of breeds demand to some extent too, or it I don't know if it creates value, but it creates a perception of value sometimes.
Absolutely.
So that's an interesting strategy, Dave. That's and you feel like that's been working well then.
It works well because I'm only slightly behind. I mean, for the most part, everyone can get everything they want from me. I'm just only slightly behind. They'll realize it comes up and it's fine. Prusa, you can tell by their wait list that they're okay with that too for their model. Just from their wait list, it works for them.
Well, yeah.
But imagine this: tomorrow, somebody can come out with a $17 roll of American-made filament and call it, Bucky, Bucky filament or Bucky PLA, and I could be, my demand drops down to 100 spools instead of having a facility that's able to make 1,000, but I only needed to make 500. I can recover a lot sooner. I have a little more time to recover from it.
Yeah.
You're just going up and down a hill. You got to be careful.
That makes sense. So, and that's, I guess, another advantage of the tool sets that we use. And, we talk about just-in-time manufacturing, the cost of holding inventory, the amount of space that requires. There's all kinds of disadvantages to just like, as much as that feels safe, it's like, oh, good, I've got some production buffer. That there's costs associated with that, and you don't know what demand's going to be, and you may end up having to liquidate and not sell, for what you expect to get out of it. So, yeah, it's there's any number of ways that it can go south on you, I'm sure.
There's one good thing I would probably put out there is margins. When you're dealing with a business and you're dealing with margins, and you have to think about shiny objects, and you have to think about release dates, that margin is going to be a big factor for you. Because let's say, as a reseller, everyone wants us to be about 20-25% margin. That's a realistic, real world number that's out there.
Okay.
But let's say it's 25% margin. That means that for every dollar I spend on employees, on rent, on electricity, it costs me $4.
Wow.
So when I look at $100 bill, I'm looking at a $400 bill. That's the math in my head. That's all I'm always doing. I multiply everything by 4 because that's the real numbers I have to see on my sales every day to make something happen.
Right.
And when you see shiny object problem, you sit there and you start going, you see that money creep down. Excuse me. You get that factor of 4 on 25% margin type of thing. Manufacturers, they tend to have higher margins because they have to deal with service and support and stuff like that.
Sure.
But you finally figure out what your final number is, and that's going to make your sliding scale you have to worry about. That lets you know when your cutoff is there.
Yeah. It's no shortage of challenges. I would say the one of the other things, for me is like the trying not to get, I call it pot committed to the process. Like, so first of all, your point about like cash is king in any business. Like you cannot be making decisions that are going to sacrifice your cash flow that you need to pay for what you are doing, whether you're continuing to do R&D and developing. So as much as you probably want to release regularly and stuff like that, you have to step back so you can make that money to pay for all of these things. But then you put these processes in place to scale it and grow. And then before you know it, so for us, it's like we do a ton of laser cutting still. I know you started there and then you realize, and I'm seeing it now because we're getting to that level, that actually CNC affords some benefits in terms of not just how you can design, but just little ancillary things like how you manage the waste and other things, and it allows you to utilize that tool for other product and stuff in the future. So I don't think that it's one can necessarily completely replace the other because they have trade-offs, but not pinning yourself. I keep going, like, I can't imagine moving to a bigger place as much as we need to, because I've spent tens of thousands of dollars, more than that, to just get the facility we have the way that we need it. And the feeling of starting over again just feels so deflating, but you need to do that. So figuring out what the right indicator is for that time, whether it's for a process change, a version change on a product, all that stuff is such a challenge.
When your bedroom is full of product because you have nowhere else to store it, that's when you need to move.
Yeah.
That's our problem right now.
I have a king bed because the other side is product that's just sleeping next to me. Yeah.
I mean, we moved 3 years ago, and we moved from 2850 Ogletown Road to 2860 Ogletown Road. And that was still, we easily spent about 25 grand just for that move.
Wow. And that was just across the street.
And that was across the street, and that was still me getting a Ryder truck and driving it myself just back and forth between 2 loading docks for days on end to get everything over.
Well, and imagine you were paying people to help for some of that stuff. There's a payroll component to it as well, I guess. That
no, I don't even consider my employees I don't consider them as a cost. They're just,
but they still very much are. Yeah. Okay.
They still are, but they're soft costs, and I get to write those off. I talk about the external companies I have to hire, the electricians, the permits, getting everything moved over.
Sure.
build outs, the basic stuff you have to get done. All those things you spent on your place just to get things going, I had to do again for the new building.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
hopefully you're in a place where you can afford to do some of that, but I know you still do a lot of that yourself and stuff too. But hopefully the reward as you grow is having more money to take on that work.
I'll be knocking a hole in the wall probably next week sometime, putting another
Ooh.
door for the next building over.
You better do it in some fantastic way that you can record. Like I said, drive your forklift through the wall, dress up like the Kool-Aid man and smash through it and go, oh yeah, something that I expect to see that on the internet, Dave. Please don't let us down. Okay. That's awesome. How many square feet are you in right now? Just to give us a concept of the size of your operation.
Right now, I'm a little over 10,000 square feet. I'm going to add another like 3,000 here in a week.
So 13,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like we're just so you guys have comparison. I'm in 1,700 square feet, so it's tiny, and our stuff is literally stacked to the rafters. I have things touching. The fire marshal would not be happy. I have stuff touching the rafters.
I feel inadequate. We're in like 900 square feet.
Well, but this is how it starts, right? So it's this is the trajectory, guys. Hopefully,
Yeah.
It just keeps
Yeah.
going up. I mean, I'm lucky I'm in a business park, so I just, every time a neighbor looks out, I'm kind of like, that meme with the guy that's standing behind the tree, and like,
when's he leaving?
I'm calling up the landlord. So how much do you want for that? And like, I'm your favorite customer. I got 4 units right now. Come on now.
Dave's like sneaking in the middle of life, like sabotaging the plumbing, just making it undesirable for them to want to stay. Wow. Well, listen, Dave, we could talk to you all day, and I feel like there's a million things that we didn't get to. I do want to ask you one more thing, and I want to give Andrew an opportunity as well, because I know I take over way too much, guys. I apologize, Andrew. Mike, never let the machines win. When we were talking about tool sets and stuff, he was just like, get the new tools because tools are write-offs, and I think he's being flippant, but I feel like that is a perilous perspective that a lot of people, especially that are new or not necessarily doing business, they go, oh, well, that's a write-off. That's a justification for getting these things. It doesn't mean it still doesn't cost you a lot of money, though.
It still costs money. And where's the money come from?
And it's not necessarily a good choice. Yeah.
Don't forget the write-off. I mean, by the time you're done, your taxes factor of 4 or factor of 5, depending on your situation. So sure, you bought a $50,000 machine, but it's only going to save you, $10,000 in taxes, maybe. And if I pay someone $50,000, I don't have to pay that $10,000 in taxes at the end of the year. So the only difference is you have an asset that when someone buys you in a merger, you get to sit there and say, I have this much assets to sell you.
You can justify your expense a little bit better. Yeah.
That's about it. But it's still money you got to spend.
It's still money you got to spend. And one of the things that I see just looking at you that I think is really kind of a key takeaway, and you can tell me what your feeling is, but your expertise and the fact that you are so fundamentally involved in the books, the understanding the money component. Like this is, I think, where it is very perilous for a lot of people getting their start. Like, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to do the books and stuff, but it's like, that's where a lot of your business decisions are being made. And so it's like, if you are not intimately involved in that and understanding that, you're flying blind a lot of the time in terms of how to make good business decisions. I don't know. What do you think of that?
If you don't know how to read the books, and someone else is taking your money, and you won't know where you're wasting money. Yeah. So even if you have the best accountant in your office, even if you have the best bookkeepers and CFO and all that stuff, you need to still actively read the books.
Sure.
Or you won't know when your filament line's starting to cost you money. And you've been covering it up by selling E3D products, and it somehow works out in the wash. You don't realize which section's losing you money.
Shots fired. I feel like that was a shot at me.
I had actually raised the price of my filament because I didn't realize I was losing money for the last year on it.
And incidentally, that should have been a masterclass, guys, in how to release I'm not gonna call it like an email just justifying the cost. I mean, we've all seen increases and stuff, and the fact that you got out in front of it and said, look, here's what's going on, here's why we're doing it, and I think people, they get it. I mean, it stinks, the cost of everything is going up, but nobody expects you to be able to continue operating at a loss. So kudos to you for that, for sure, sir. And to understand too, you don't have a CFO, or you're doing the books yourself still, right? We talked about
I'm
this at Rapid.
CFO, CTO, CEO, and COO.
And you like it that way, or you feel it's necessary? What's the reason?
Well, as CFO, I have decided I don't have enough money to fill the other roles yet.
You got bigger fish to fry with that precious cash when you get it, huh?
Yeah, let's put it this way. I would rather put that money in inventory and product right now than to hire, a bunch of people to sit in offices.
Yeah, like as a pure overhead
yeah,
kind of cost. Interesting.
my company's not big enough yet for that to deal with.
So when do you think people, like, I know it's going to depend on, company to company, but in your opinion, when do you feel like people are big enough? Like, I've wasted way too much money trying to hire bookkeepers and all this stuff that really aren't giving me any benefit. That was a lesson hard learned for me. What do you feel like the indicate because you're almost, how many people are you now? 8, 7?
7 people and working on an 8.
Okay. So even at that size, you feel like you're not ready for that degree of overhead, or not, you're not personally willing because you feel like you've got that covered to your.
Well, it's a matter of I'm awake for give or take 100 hours a week, and I'm still able to get everything done in that 100 hours. Once I'm not able to get it done in that 100 hours, then I have to hire someone to take over.
Okay.
Everyone here, I've done all their jobs at one point or another.
Right.
But
I was actually going to ask that is how do you, like, when you are talking about shiny object syndrome, for us, we're still small, so I do all of those jobs as well. But, I see all of the potentials for increasing productivity or process or that sort of stuff. So, I was going to ask if you actually worked each one of those individual jobs, and, how do you balance, that scale of, do I chase this for automation? Do I just, continue letting this person do it? And then how do you factor that into your own personal decisions for how you grow your business?
I try really hard to simplify everything as much as I can, make it as straightforward as possible for me and my workers. So, it's where you look and say, hey, listen, they're walking 2 feet between these 2 boxes. Let's make that 1 foot. That'll make them 10 times more productive, type of thing. But once again, I mean, I'm awake for 100 hours, and I'll hire someone as soon as I don't have anything to do in that 100 hours. So that's kind of what it takes right now. But no, everybody here, I mean, when we started, it was me and Matt.
Right.
I ran Rand Laser. It was me, 100% everything. And then I joined with Matt, and it was me and Matt doing everything. And I mean, everything. So, and then we started hiring, one person at a time as things progressed. It just got bigger and bigger naturally. It's a bloody nightmare. But if you're a business owner or a maker that's doing a business, and you are not if you're not running at 100% of your waking hours at your business, you're wasting money.
Now, is that ever okay? Because what about the work-life balance, or do you believe that's not really a thing if you're going to truly make a run as your own?
Oh, that's for your employees. That's for your work-life balance is for your employees, not for you. If you guys, you run into me in a bar, you're going to ask me business questions.
Hell yeah. I'm not going to waste my time asking you.
Yeah, where's my order, and what about this, and blah, 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 blah. When are you going to release Relixer and all that stuff?
That was actually asked.
Oh, I know. I see that all the time. We're working on it, I swear.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that you expect to ask me all those questions, but you're not going to be asking Jeremy, when's my package shipping tomorrow? Right. He's allowed to have a life. He's allowed to go out there and collect records and go to parties and stuff like that. And no, I have to go home and make sure QuickBooks is caught up for the quarter.
And you do believe, so I know, and it's a different, we all have different, we're in different parts of our lives. I have young children. Andrew is recently married. You obviously shared with us that you've been,
I have an old dog
doing this, and you have your dog. And so obviously what is right or normal for all of us is a matter of personal opinion. But I think what you're saying is spot on. Like you're never really on vacation. You're never really off. Because you can't make your mind stop when it's all you know.
I know my wife is so frustrated with me all the time about that.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if you don't work that 100 hours a week or you don't get that max in there, you'll never get to the point where your business is so big it doesn't need you anymore.
Mm.
I can't agree more, Dave. Like, I feel like that's the path that I'm on, and it's hard. It's absolutely tough.
I mean, that's your dream, is you're trying to get it to that point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I can, I mean, like when I told Joe, doing the deal, I was just like, my dream with this whole place is I want to take a vacation someday. I don't know where I want to go, but I just want to take 1 week off.
Yeah, week sounds right. I can't enjoy things much past that because I get too restless, needing to get back to it. But maybe that's a sign of the personality that it might take for this. So as we wrap up, what advice? I would love it if you could give us like advice and maybe something specific here. We're talking about what it takes to go from just you as starting your thing to what you have the path that you walked it, but when people are growing, like what are some key milestones that you would recommend? Like, okay, first try to get to here, then try to get to your first hire or get a specific building. I mean, how do you get out of the garage? What's the escape from the garage look like?
Well, first get your garage done. I mean, that's the first thing I would tell everyone is get your product, get it made, and make it so that your garage no longer works for your business. That should be your very first goal. Sheer size, sheer scale. I had my first time, I had people that I hired that were going into my house while I still went to my day job. So, that's what you do.
Wow.
So, I was paying people so that I could go to work.
Braver than me. I wouldn't want people in my house, but I can understand that you're doing whatever it takes. I get it.
Right. And you do that, and you grow the business until you get the garage full. And that should be your goal. I mean, that's what every Silicon Valley story you hear is that the garage was out of control and 6 people sitting at their desk desperately trying to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing the same thing, then you're not building your business. And the other thing I would say is make damn sure that the product you're making, you're passionate about. I mean, Gloop. You have to just absolutely love every aspect of that product because every single day you're working with glue.
Yep.
I mean, you have to simplify it, but for you,
Yeah.
you have to love that.
It is literally that's exactly it.
And he does, and it's creepy, man. I can't put on it. Yeah, he's amazing with that.
And Rep box. I mean, you're making a box.
I know.
When you break it down and you're passionate about it. I'm over here making string and selling someone else's ideas, but I'm passionate about it. So you have to make darn sure that whatever product you're going to make, whatever product you're going to sell, you could never get tired of it. I've seen so many people that just they hate their company. Make sure that whatever you're doing in your garage is good.
That sounds so weird to me. So first of all, David, we call it fine filament furniture here. And it's so bizarre, like, because I've had people like ask me that too. It's like, you make like, why is that even exciting? And I'm like, because nobody else cares about it. Nobody thinks about it. It's literally the last thing that anybody, like I said, puts any time and effort into doing or designing. And yet I find it to be such a satisfying part of the process. I'm way more interested in a lot of times in the organization and the support structures behind 3D printing than the printers themselves oftentimes. And so I love it, but
I mean, that's how my enclosure started, and that was just a freaking box. You know what I mean? It's just a very well designed box for a specific purpose, but every single screw hole on those products you're passionate about. I mean, you think about the packing material. I mean, I still know exactly how many wraps of cardboard is in every box, and the corner edge weight on everything, and I can tell you shipping weight on every one of my enclosures and dimensions.
Yeah.
You have to be passionate about it, and if you're not, the business is going to fail.
That's great. That's great advice. And it sounds like, and the goal should always be outgrowing. Like, and you like said, eventually you're going to outgrow to the point where you outgrow the business and you can retire and hopefully have some years left of your life to enjoy, I guess.
Well, my goal is that I want to, take a week off and then come back and play with 3D printers in my basement someday. That would be kind of fun.
and again, to get back to China, that's the biggest challenge as makers. It's like maker pooch is constantly at battle with business pooch, I want to play. I want to play, and so I'm lucky that I have the opportunity to get a little bit of that satisfaction by what we're doing. We're doing a lot of work on the belt printing, and I'm really enjoying. But I know it's time well spent because we're getting great potential product out of it and stuff like that. So
I will leave you on the most depressing day of my life. It was the day that I was sitting here and I was so busy doing QuickBooks and accounting and filing my quarterly taxes that we got the brand new Mosaic palette at our shop. I mean, a pre-order, I had it here and it was delivered to me. I paid with my own personal money.
Yeah.
And I went to Tony here and I told him, hey, I don't have time for this. I'm going to pay you to figure it out and then tell me what to do.
Oh, wow.
I paid someone else to play with a new toy. And that was probably one of the most depressing days of my life in 3D printing, is when I realized I have to pay other people to
play,
do what I love.
I've been there, and it's tough because it's like part of it is like, well, you're selling it, so you want to have some understanding of the product and all that stuff too. But also because we're passionate about it and we love that stuff. That's sad, but I hope you are still finding some time for some of the things that you're passionate about. I do see you have your retro computer museum that you're building in your house, and so you do seem to find some time for other things to keep you sane.
I had to pick something else. Yeah,
we've got, and you wanted, is that distance intentionally just so that you could not?
I still managed to make it in 3D printing. I made 2 filaments just for retro computer people, but I was trying to distance myself.
And you can't do it.
Nope.
Well, I hope that. And would you say that's one of your tactics to avoid burnout at some point, or are you concerned about because Chep in the chat is bringing up burnout, and that's a real thing.
Find something else. Find something else if you can, but you still got to put 100 hours. So you only get an hour a week, so it better be a good hour. I get my joy is I got me a new lawnmower. I enjoy that.
The simple pleasures. I get you. I mean, just hopping on the mower. Is it a 0 turn at least?
It is a fully electric 0 turn.
What?
Ooh.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's fully electric, but you have to ride it still, or is it?
I still have to ride it.
Okay, all right.
No, I still have to ride it because I hit a full speed and I just go for it across the yard. It's kind of fun.
Oh man, the things that we enjoy, we're such dorks, but man, it's so zen just getting on the riding mower sometimes and zipping around and running lines, in the grass. Listen, David, we've taken up so much of your time. I know you got of your 100 hours. We were lucky to get more than one of them here, so send me a bill, and and we'll happily put it in the pile. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Like I said, at some point we'll have to have you back on as a follow-up to see how things are progressing, because I'm just really excited, as I'm sure you are. And thank you so much. A lot of people applauding your transparency. It's incredibly insightful and valuable to people to just kind of understand what it takes to get to certain levels and on strategies and all of that stuff. So thank you from both of us.
And anybody watching it, build something, make it, and try and sell it.
Just do it, right? Just go for it. And
in 3 months, if you haven't done it, I'm going to do it. So
that's right. He's coming for you. The lesson, guys, Dave Randolph is coming for you if you don't. He's like the boogeyman of
the boogeyman. Oh gosh.
Yeah, the chupacabra of the maker world. He's gonna get you. Thanks so much, Dave. That was awesome. Andrew, thank you for letting me just completely overwhelm the conversation. But
great.
You always have great insight. Anything else you want to leave us with, or ask Dave before we sign off real quick?
No, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Again, echoing what Pooch said. Can't wait to have you back on, in a few months, and then maybe we can get Joe on and see how those stories
see
match
if the
up.
stories line up. I know, that'd be great. Quick teaser, guys, for next week. Awesome show this week, but next week we're gonna have Stefan from CNC Kitchen. Big fan of his channel. And he's making a run now as a creator, trying to do product, and that's such an interesting challenge. So we look forward to asking him how that's going and understand in his process and opinion. So tune in for that. Set a reminder. Like I said, we're going to try to be regular. Some housekeeping issues. I've got a bunch of travel coming up. Obviously, many of you may see us in Murph at the end of June. I'm going to be in the UK for some events early next month and stuff too. So we may have some summer months where we're going to miss a week and stuff, but we'll keep you posted on that. But until next time, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. This is Maker That Money, Pooch with Repkord, Andrew, and Dave with Printed Solids.
Thank you, guys.
Signing off. Goodbye, everybody. And we are clear. Thank you, David. Sorry about